So tonight, team, we're going to dive into something which I feel like is so important to continually go back into and remind ourselves because, some of us are going on transformations that are going to take time, and we've got to stick with this for longer than maybe we thought, or longer than we had hoped. And so we're going to go into all about how success isn't about what you do when you're motivated. It's about what you do when you're not. All right. And we know every other day we'll wake up not feeling like we want to do the things that we need to do. Not every day we're going to wake up and feel good about seizing the day, ticking all the boxes, and we're going to have to grind it out sometimes, and we're just going to have to get it done. All right. So we're going to go into that today, and it's going to be really kind of actionable. I'm going to give you 8 steps in which you can go away, think about, and get really clear on how to continue to succeed even when we're not motivated. All right. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is all right. So first of all, like this kind of motivation thing that gets talked about a lot, this motivation myth, right? When are we least motivated? Like put in the Zoom chat, when are you least motivated? It's things like this, right? After a bad night's sleep, after a long day, when we're stressed at work, during work travel. If you can think of any other things, pop it in the Zoom chat. But like when we think about what is going to cause our motivation to drop, and we list off things like that, like, and then we think about how often these things actually happen in real life, especially with our travel schedules, our routine being all over the place, it never being the same for, more than a week or two. These things happen every month, if not every week, several times a month, right? And so if your plan only works, I've got a really itchy nose. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. If our plan only works when we're motivated, like the plan doesn't work because it is totally normal for on a regular basis to not feel motivated. And so we have to put together a plan that doesn't rely on that because otherwise it's not going to get done, right? And we're not going to get to where we want to be. So we have to build a plan for our worst days, a plan that doesn't feel overwhelming, a plan that doesn't feel like a Mount Everest to climb. Most people are creating plans for when everything goes to plan, when everything is ideal, when the conditions are perfect, right? And yet that's great on those perfect days, like when we've had 8 hours sleep, when we've got plenty of time to go out and train for 2 hours, when we've got a full kitchen, and we can cook whatever we want, when we're in the middle of the city and we've got every shop or restaurant to hand. And when we're in our normal routine at home, heading into the office, coming back at a normal time, a consistent time. But men like us, men who travel with work, we don't live like that. Like that's not, life is not like that. Life is far more inconsistent. Our routine is far more up and down. And so instead, we have to ask ourselves, like, what could I realistically do on my hardest week? Because the plan that you're actually going to follow is a plan that is the answer to that question, is a plan that we can deliver on our hardest week. And look, at some stage, if we want to continue to see further results, either we might get to a crossroads where it's like some things have to give and this has to become a real priority, or that further result isn't worth what I'm going to have to give up and change within my life. And we have to kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. But for the majority of the process, and especially at the start, we need to just set a plan we can deliver on on our good days and our bad days, because ultimately, if that stops us in our tracks early on in the process, we're never going to get to where we want to be. We're never going to get there, and we're never going to get close. As an example, like we're not aiming for 5 or 6 gym sessions, an hour and a half in the gym every time. We're not aiming for crazy steps. We're not aiming for, you know, meal prepping for every day. It might just be 3 workouts. 2 of them might be home workouts. It might be getting protein in at every meal. It might be starting off with 8,000 steps because that is kind of at present what we feel like we can definitely get in on a daily basis, even if we have a delay at work, if our flight gets delayed, if the conference runs over, you know, one good meal decision every single day, one really positive, nutritious meal every single day. Because the realistic plan is going to be an attempt to make a perfect plan and slow progress things. Sorry, and slowly progresses things. Oh, and I'm getting muddled up here. God, it's been a long day. A realistic plan is going to be a perfect plan, and the the goal of this is to then progress that slowly and only when necessary. Yeah, and that's why we don't just all of a sudden try and eat as little as possible. We don't all of a sudden try and do as many steps as possible. We don't jump into this crazy gym routine because very quickly we're going to have one bad week and that won't happen and things start to spiral, right? So we want to make being disciplined, and we know that we're not always going to be motivated, so we have to be disciplined when that motivation isn't there. And we want to make being disciplined as easy as we possibly can. Yeah, so discipline isn't something like you either have or you don't have, you create it. And so I've got some ways I'm going to run through to stay disciplined or make being disciplined easier. All right. But ultimately, being disciplined is a skill and you're not going to be good at it, but we want to get better at it. So let's dive into them. First one, pre-planning the decisions, right? When we're on a work trip, when we're busy, when we're away, we're in stressful situations, we've maybe had a bad night's sleep, like our willpower and our cognitive kind of function, the way we think, our thinking with clarity is gonna be at its weakest. However, it's at its strongest. We're as clear thinking as we can be when we're well rested, when we're at home, before we've gone through that. And that's when our willpower is strongest. So that's when we should be making the decisions. That's when we should be, putting the plan together. That's when we should be thinking about where to stay, what hotel we need to stay in, because there's a gym close by or it has good facilities, or, um, you know, packing the resistance bands, get them in the bag, like ready to go, so we know we're not going to forget them. Identifying like a supermarket we could have close to where we're staying, so that we can make buying some food or some snacks to top us up for the day or to make sure we're hitting our protein goal. You know, pre-planning these things are going to be so much easier, and therefore being disciplined and doing that task is going to be so much easier if we do it, acknowledge when like it's going to be the easiest to make those decisions, right? Planning the days in which we're going to work out. We do this within the program every single week. And we want to do it before we're in that difficult, stressful situation. We want to think before, when we've got clarity and we know on this day we've got this flight and this meeting, and that day we've got this. So let's pop our session in there because that's going to make the most sense. It's going to have the highest chance of getting done. And ultimately, the fewer decisions you make when you're in a tough situation, stressed, tired, the better. Yeah, and the least likely we are of making a bad decision. Second thing, have a really strong reason why. And I've done a call on this actually, but having a really strong reason why we're doing this is gonna make those difficult moments where you don't want to get up off the sofa or you have had a long day, it's gonna give you purpose. Like it's gonna when you think about that reason, you know, if you have one off the top of your head, if you have one, a clear one that you've been thinking about throughout this journey, drop it in the Zoom chat if you're comfortable to do so. But having a strong reason why is gonna be what carries you forward, what helps you show up when that motivation is gone, when it's not there. All right. And we have to ask ourselves, like, why are we even doing this? And we've had conversations with this like this when you started the program and throughout, guys, but like it's important that we have it written down somewhere maybe, but we have it at the forefront of our mind all the time, and it's not something you're gonna forget, and it could be different for everyone, and it will be different for everyone, even if it's just kind of having more confidence in yourself, your self-confidence, because that means you show up at work as a better person, you show up with friends and family as more yourself, you know, overall better health if you've got some kind of health situations going on, or you've had a family history of health things coming up, you know, certain health conditions, and you'd want to do your best to, you had a family member, have something happen when they were a similar age to you, whatever it is, being around for your kids for as long as possible, being as active as you possibly can for as long as possible for your kids. Like everybody has their own reason, but the stronger the reason, the easier it is to tolerate the discomfort. Because when we when our motivation isn't there, like doing the stuff still is gonna feel uncomfortable. It's gonna be difficult, but we have to ultimately tolerate any discomfort that comes along with the process. And how do we best give ourselves the best chance of doing that? And that's by having a really, really strong reason why we're doing this. The next one, break everything down. A lot of people quit because they're like thinking about absolutely everything. And I've been guilty of this before. I know I have. Let me know in the Zoom chat if you have. But like getting overwhelmed because you want to get everything perfect at the start. That's why we try and focus on one or two things at a time so we don't get overwhelmed, right? So instead, we're focusing on just today, our workout today, what our protein looks like today, you know, just this kind of this morning before work. Let's just focus on how can I get as many steps done as possible. The decisions today, not the decisions that you need to make to achieve your end goal of losing 20 kilos, not all the decisions you need to make for the next 6 months, for the next year, if you, depending on how long you make a commitment to doing something like this, you know? Make that mountain smaller, break it down, make it a series of small hurdles that you can just step over one after another instead of making it a Mount Everest, getting overwhelmed and ultimately increasing the chances of you not following through because things become too much. The next thing, lower the energy we need to start. Those small things that we want to do and want to get good at to like start a process, start a day, start an action. We want to make that as easy as possible. We want that habit to be really, really easy to start. So if that would be going to the gym in the morning, you're away on a work trip, you're in the hotel, you've booked somewhere with a gym. If that is like, I need to go to the gym in the morning, how do I make this habit super easy? I lay out my gym clothes. It's there. As soon as I get out of bed, my gym gear is right there. I don't have to go rummaging around. It's right there waiting for me, and I just have to slip it on. Keeping like protein bars or some beef jerky or some snacks in your bag all the time. If you're somebody who will, you know, go through a travel day or a long journey and not eat because they weren't very prepared, and then you get to your destination and you go crazy because you haven't kind of had protein since 9 o'clock in the morning, haven't had a meal since 9 o'clock in the morning, and so being unprepared, you're now going crazy and overindulging in the evening. Yeah. So by by having something with us, we're gonna make it really easy to stay on track, right? Have a hotel room workout saved on your phone. Something as easy as that, where it's right there, one click away, just to make it as easy as you can for yourself to get there. This is a big part of why so many guys that I speak to, when they go away with work, when they're traveling, they don't train, they don't do anything. That routine completely stops because in that moment where they probably have time to train or they would train, they have to try and work out what they've got available, what facilities they have, how they need to change the plan that they were doing at home to make it appropriate to where they are now. How long is that going to take me? I don't quite know how this machine works. Having something there ready to go, one click away, it just removes all those barriers and it makes it super, super easy to just do it. You know, another one, don't have to do this. It was a, it was a bit of a joke to sleep in your work clothes. Yeah, sleep in your gym clothes. But often starting is the hardest part. And so if we can make it as easy for ourselves as possible to just start, to get our toe in the door, our foot over the line, then we're setting ourselves up to succeed. Next one, create non-negotiables. Yeah. So rather than trying to be perfect, examples, having protein at every meal, just having some protein at every meal. It's have a considerable source, build your meal around a source of protein. It's not that difficult. If we make that a non-negotiable, then it's just the first thing we do when we go to have a meal. We're like, right, this is the first thing that I think about. Minimum 20-minute walk a day. Get up 20 minutes earlier and go for a walk. 20 minutes is nothing. And you start to do that, you start to feel the benefits, you start to feel how better the start to your day is. You'll probably start to go to bed 20 minutes earlier because, your body clock will just shift a little bit. But ultimately, when we see the benefits to something, it becomes easier to do, right? It becomes easier to make it and continue it to be a non-negotiable. 3 sessions per week, whatever it looks like, doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it's 20 minutes, one of them, just just getting those three done. Tracking your food, honestly, not perfectly. I said that weird then. Not perfect, not perfectly, honestly. Yeah. And these become the standards then, regardless of how you feel. It's just like, I'm the person who does this. This is what I do. This is a non-negotiable. I just get up. I know what time I've got to start the day tomorrow. I get up with enough time to do a 20-minute walk. That's just me. That's what I do every single morning. It's normal. And the next one, expect resistance. And this is the big one. Yeah. Because many people think maybe this is difficult. I'm struggling to do this every day. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. You're not. Yeah. It feels hard because maybe you're tired, you're stressed, busy, you're doing something different. You're doing something you haven't done before. And if something feels uncomfortable, it's evidence that you're doing something different. And ultimately, the only reason we are undertaking a journey like this of bettering our health, losing some weight, getting stronger is because we're not as healthy as we want to be. We're not as strong as we want to be. We're not as light as we want to be. And so, what we've done up until this point has led us to being in that position. And so, we have to do things differently to not be in that position anymore. And feeling uncomfortable, things feeling difficult, it's evidence that you're doing something different. So that should be reassuring, although it's kind of a weird complex to kind of think about. Next thing is focus on winning the day, not the week. Yeah, many men who might have a work trip, overnight somewhere Wednesday to Thursday, and you head to the airport and things kind of spiral a little bit, one bad meal, all of a sudden the week's ruined. I can't catch back up. it lets yourself off the hook and you can almost justify to yourself, it's not worth continuing this week. I'll focus on things again next week. Yeah. So instead, we just focus on that next decision we make, whatever it is, you know, whether it's you're in the airport and you're going to the toilet and you take the stairs instead of the escalator, you know, whether it's that evening then when we're in the hotel and you know, swapping out the chips for some potatoes instead. Like we just that next decision, we get back on track by making a good decision. And again, the point from a few points ago, like just focusing on one thing at a time, breaking things down, not thinking too far ahead. Because one meal isn't going to ruin everything. And by being aware of what our intake is, like this is the whole point. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to have days where we struggle, where we're limited to what we can consume or have access to. The whole point is that doesn't ruin the week because we're learning how to manipulate things off the back of that to stay where we want to be, to continue on the right path. And that's just like one healthy meal isn't going to change the game, isn't going to create the best week, you know? We just have to do these things consistently. And if we can stop thinking about the results of every decision and what that might mean, it becomes easier to show up. So if one meal isn't perfect, we don't want to worry about what that could mean down the line. You know, it could mean I'm over my calories today. Don't eat my protein. Tomorrow, I I might feel not as energized. You know, I might feel a bit more sluggish. The rest of the week, then I might not be able to get my calories back down. You know, there's no point in thinking too far ahead. It becomes much easier to show up when we just focus on the next decision instead of what a decision we've made in the past is going to cause. The next one is removing that all or nothing mindset. You know, it's simple. 100% like being 100% perfect and being 100% on it isn't available, you know? We can't be perfect all the time. And so expecting that for a second is going to always leave us disappointed. And if we're struggling with disappointment, we're going to give up, you know? And so 70% is something that we can deliver. And so 70% done daily is going to be attempting to be 100% and not delivering on that, you know? Big one. Keeping promises to yourself, you know, and this is one of the strongest like mindset points you can have throughout this whole journey. If you say to yourself you're going to do something, if you make a plan to do something, like if every time you're saying I'm going to train tomorrow, you know, and you don't, you reduce the trust in yourself. And then that has a knock-on effect to every other decision going forward. You know, every time you follow through with something, every time you deliver on something you're going to say, you're building the evidence that you're the type of person who does what he says. And confidence will be built as a result from that self-trust. You know, you're building the evidence that you're somebody who delivers on your word. Not only proving it to yourself, but also proving it to the people around you, the people that you care about. You want to be the man that delivers on what you say you're going to do. Because when you do that with your health, with your fitness, it then leaks into every other area of life. You don't want to be the man who says things and doesn't follow through. No, you want to be the man that people can rely on. And and yourself can rely on, you know, to put yourself in the best position for you, for your partner, for your kids. Getting licked by the dog. So, some final thoughts, yeah? Like the goal isn't to become somebody who's always motivated. Having that as the goal and aspiring to try and just like feel motivated all the time is gonna set you up to fail. It's an impossible feat, and so we will again always be left disappointed. And so the goal is to become somebody who still executes the plan when they're not motivated. Yeah, who still shows up, grits their teeth, gets it done, follows through on what they said they're going to do, prove to themselves that they can do it. They can stick to something consistently. They can show up when they don't feel like it, you know? Because for men who travel for work, unfortunately, that is just the reality. We don't have ideal circumstances. We don't get perfect routines. Things are always changing. And and our energy takes a hit as a result, more so than, somebody who didn't have travel to deal with. So what we do, and so what we do get is a choice, you know? So we can either prepare for the hard days or we could be surprised by them, and being prepared to make it as easy for ourselves to do it when we're not motivated to do the things we need to do. That's that's the goal here. And the men who actually transform, who make the changes they say they want at the start, who actually become that person, they're not the men who are the most motivated. They're not the men who are motivated the most days out of start to finish. They're the men who are working on just making it as easy for themselves to show up day after day on the days that, motivation is non-existent, right? So what I want you to do now is head over to the WhatsApp chat, hashtag mindset, and drop in there either kind of one big takeaway from this call or kind of one thing you're really going to focus on putting into practice and implementing off the back of this. Okay, go and do that now before you do anything else, um, and kind of show those guys who haven't joined the call that the benefits to really being in the moment with this and how you can put something into practice, go forward and actually, you know, see value and benefit from these calls. When we're in the moment, think one decision at a time, one thing at a time, as we've said. Um, don't put it off, even if you're not motivated, go and do it. But I appreciate you joining, appreciate you being here. Any questions on the subject, on the topic, fire them into the WhatsApp chat. And yeah, I will catch you guys on the next one.